Namaste. So today is the culmination of the 5-day workshop, and we will transition while maintaining a bridge from the story of Nachiketa to the story of Satyavan and Savitri. We all know the story of Savitri and Satyavan. It forms part of the Aranyak Parva, the Vana Parva of Mahabharata, the epic Mahabharata written by Vedavyas. And in this, Sri Aurobindo saw something more. Originally, this was spoken by Rishi Markandya in the Mahabharata. And Sri Aurobindo, in the outer story, saw a deeper symbolism. And through the epic Savitri, he tried to capture not just the story with its symbolism, but also with his experience, his and the mother's experience of his entire process of ascension and the descent, and therefore the establishing of true immortality, the physical immortality on earth. We know that King Ashwapati, who did not have a child, did tapasya. Savitri, the goddess, appeared before him and granted him with a boon that he would have a daughter. And Ashwapati named his daughter after Savitri. When she grows up, she's a divine being, and there's nobody who can be a suitor for her. So she's asked to find the person who she would like to be with. And the person she finally likes and chooses is Satyavan, who is in the forest because his father, Dyumatsena, has been exiled and after he was blinded. But the sage Narada warns her or gives her this premonition that Satyavan is going to live only for 1 year. And yet, Savitri is resolved, stands strong in her resolve. And after 1 year, this is the day when Satyavan must die, she insists to accompany him to the forest where he wanted to go to cut wood. And there, when the Lord Yama, who Sri Aurobindo calls the god of death, appears, there is an entire process, a journey. And like Nachiketa, she ends up getting the 4 boons from Yama. And the last boon is life of Satyavan. So this is the broad outline of the story. And yet, there are a lot of symbolic readings into the whole story, including in the 4 boons. So we start with first the characters. Unlike in Nachiketa and the god of death, and there is Vajashravas, here there are 4 central characters. Ashwapati, literally translating as Lord of the Horse, of the horses. And from the secret of the Veda, we know that horse represents power, and a person who's Lord of that actually represents the Lord of Tapasya, the energy of spiritual endeavor. And that was Ashwapati, who, with the power of his tapasya, invokes the Divine Mother. And Savitri, the daughter of the sun, who is the Divine Mother, she descends, and she has descended to save. Satyavan is the divine soul carrying the divine truth of being, but he is descended in the grip of death and ignorance. If we go back to the first or the second session where we discussed the story of creation of the mother, that when the 4 beings were emanated, consciousness in light, and bliss, truth, and existence, Sat, they became their opposites. Light turned into complete darkness, consciousness. Bliss turned into suffering. Truth turned into falsehood. And Sat, existence or life, turned into death. So when we take up, so who is Satyavan? The first avatar, the spark, the spark of the Divine Mother, the love, the psychic spark that first enters this inconscient, he's actually the first avatar because he begins evolution. He is the soul of man climbing towards God. And this is who Satyavan is. If we have to draw parallel, he is the Nachiketa here. Satyavan, who is the soul of man climbing towards God. And Dyumatsena, the father of Satyavan, translated literally is Lord of the Shining Hosts, one who has the army, Sena, of the Shining Hosts. And this is symbolic of the divine mind. And in the story, he's lost his eyesight and his kingdom. So he's fallen blind and he does not have a place or a kingdom to be. So this is the symbolism of the 4 characters. But something here we should pause to look at, that the mother also says that Satyavan also represents the jiva of the earth, the soul of the earth. And here is where we should pause and look at, this slide that I was showing. When we go back to the slide, the game changer here, as we discussed, is this psychic entity. Because it is this psychic entity which makes the whole thing evolutionary. This entire schema that you see is typal, even higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, these are all typal planes. Therefore, the gods who represent each of these faculties of consciousness, including the higher faculty of consciousness, whenever there is intense sadhana going on earth, they come and participate. For instance, in the early 20s and 30s, when there was a lot of intense sadhana going in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Nolinida writes that how the gods like Varuna and Mitra and Indra, they came into the sadhaks because they want to experience this evolution. They want to be one with the Supreme. Otherwise, they are in higher states, but they are there. They do not get this chance to be one with the Supreme. And who is the Supreme, the Purushottama of the Gita? The Purushottama is again the one who has become many, Bahusyam. But he has not become many where everything is the same. He has become many in diversity. He has become many in multiplicity. And Therefore, the Brahman, which is the Supreme, is the Brahman, the Supreme is the unmanifest, the Supreme is the psychic entity, the Supreme is the Atman. But he is the Purushottama, beyond the Atman, beyond. And he is a being. And the psychic being was the spark from this Supreme being. And therefore, the Earth is the only planet or the only place which is evolutionary. And the psychic entity, it's what makes the human evolutionary. So this is a very big thing to always keep in mind, that we are the luckiest, because we have a chance to become a child of the Supreme. To take an example from the corporate world, let's say there's the chairman who is the Supreme. He has lots of CEOs, presidents, who are very senior in the hierarchy. And yet, they have access to the Supreme. And there is a position, either you can call the executive assistant to the chairman or the son of the chairman at home, who is not as qualified or has as much of the powers or capabilities, let's say, of the CEO, but the child of the chairman at home can be in his lap. He's the only one who can experience him, give him a hug, be close to him. And that is what this psychic being is. This is what it does in us and makes us evolutionary. So when we follow the path of the escape, the Atman, and out, we are again following the typal way of release. Whereas that is not the reason for which this universe was created. It was created so that the Supreme can enjoy himself in multiplicity. But this enjoyment is today, because of the ego, it has become of strife and confusion and ignorance. But when the psychic being becomes the leader of our lives, the true I, when we shift to, then the Supreme has a chance to enjoy himself in multiplicity. And we carry, each of us, this possibility of this psychic being and becoming the child of the Supreme. So this is a very important distinction to remember. And it is from here that we will now look at what is it that the Supreme looks like in Supermind. So basically, to simplify that diagram, this is the 7 levels of consciousness. They are referred to as the rivers. They are the 7 rivers in the Vedas because they are flowing. They are the rivers of consciousness. So we have matter, life, and mind, which is the lower hemisphere, which is called the triple world of ignorance. And we have the descending triangle of Satchitananda. And this is the higher hemisphere, the higher realm. So the supermind is the one in between that can reflect both. It can hold on to both. Otherwise, from the lower hemisphere, without the supermind, there can only be a direct flight, to the transcendental. But if we have to take the road and the ladder, then it is the supermind which is the connecting force between the lower hemisphere and the higher hemisphere. And when we discuss these grades, what Sri Aurobindo says is still the overmental level. What we discussed till yesterday, it is still, there is a bit of ignorance. There is a bit of not complete unity. At the supermind is where there is absolute disappearance of ignorance. And in the Vedic period, the rishis could reach up to the overmind and work from there. But the supermind was not reachable. And it is mentioned as Hiranmayena Patrena, the golden lid. Though they were aware of something called the supermind, when it is in the Isha, It is said Hiranmayena Patrena. But there was no way to kind of station there and to work from there. And Sri Aurobindo has brought down this layer of supermind. And when he talks about how the supramental being would be, it is interesting for us to first understand that, because that is our aim, right? So the supramental being will have a unity of knowledge, will, and action. So we saw that from the level of higher mind, there is a sort of unity is formed. Unlike at the level of the mind, where when we want to do something, sometimes we don't have the energy to do it. Sometimes the body does not cooperate. A simple thing like getting up at 5 in the morning and going for a run. Every new year we resolve that we would do it, but after a point, it kind of slips away. From the higher mind level, this unity begins to get established, but at supermind, it is complete. So there is a oneness of knowledge, will, and action. There is immediacy of the will and its manifestation on earth. And that is the reason the purification of the being is very essential, because otherwise, if any little desire remains or any thought remains, there will be a chaos with that power. If it were immediately to manifest. There is a story where there is this man who is in the forest, and he's very hungry, and he says, I wish there was some food, and some food appears. Then he has a nice fill, and he says, I'm thirsty. I wish there was some water, and then water appears. Then he says, I'm tired now. I wish I could sleep, and a bed appears. And then he starts thinking, the mind comes in. I don't know what is this going on. I hope this is not, some asura. And then this asura comes, and then fear takes over. Says, I hope he's not going to eat me up, and he eats him up. So this is a very simple way of saying that unless the purification of the lower hemisphere in every which way has happened, there is no possibility that knowledge, will, and action can be one. So the beauty of supermind is that it is self-regulated. China can, try and go and take Vietnam, or some country can colonize something, but nobody can colonize the supermind. It can only appear when the adhara is perfected. And that is the beauty of it. Nobody can claim it. And it cannot come from personal will, because that is still a desire. And which is very beautifully shared in the story of Trishanku, which we discussed. That he wanted to achieve physical immortality because of his desire. And he kind of ascended, but he was stuck halfway. Until today, he's stuck halfway through. So it is only when the psychic becomes the leader of our lives. Till then, our personal effort, even aspiration, rejection, surrender is necessary. But once surrender is there, Mother says, I will do the yoga for you. I will take up the entire process. It is the Shakti that will do. The pace at which it will happen, or the manner in which it will happen, is something that is not a personal will or a desire. Once we have handed over and the process of psychicization is complete, that would take it up, forward. So oneness of knowledge, will, and action is the first thing. The second is knowledge by identity. If one wants to know something, one will become that and know it. Not through the mind, not through the process of analysis, not even through the process of synthesis, not even through a direct vision of the illumined or intuitive planes. Not even the over-mental oneness, which is, again, not of becoming it, but of a perception and an experience of a higher kind. Here, knowledge by identity. Sri Aurobindo warns us right at the beginning of the chapter in The Gnostic Being that it is something that the mind cannot understand. And yet it is his love that he still writes pages after pages to satisfy our mind. It cannot be understood by the mind. For it would be like a fairy tale. It is like when animal was told that there would be a species who would go to the moon You could imagine the surprise on the face of the chimpanzee when he would look up at the moon and wonder, how can somebody go there? How can I jump so high so that I can go there? So it's the same way we feel. And it's only this faith, the Shraddha of Nachiketa, which is a belief that it is possible, because something in us reflects it, the psychic being, that possibility, and the mother and Sri Aurobindo, the supreme catalysts who have come and done it. So these are the two things on the way that will make us even understand how the supramental being would be. The third thing is there would be an absolute harmony. So as mother says, all the problems of the world are problems of harmony. So there would be harmony of self within self. All the planes and parts of oneself will be in complete harmony. The self and the world, universally, one would be in harmony and with the transcendental. And while the individual will become the universal and the transcendental, it will not be at the cost of loss of individuality, but it would be the raising of individuality to the divine individuality. He would become one with the universe and express it, but he would be above it, free from the universe, like the lotus, on the mud. It is off it. It is off the mud, but above it. And it would freely, while being transcendental, it would choose to also be present and limit itself to be in the universal and the individual planes without losing its transcendence. So that is the beauty of the being, that it would be free, and it would choose what limitation it wants to take up for a particular work, but it would be not today. We are bound by this limitation, but it would be for him a limitation would be a choice. And similarly, even the decision to take birth or to die would be will. It would be a choice. And even when the supramental being is there on earth, Sri Aurobindo says there would be a hierarchy of beings, right from the higher mind up to the overmind also. There would be, he says, a shining ladder of ascending degrees. There would be beings who have the higher mind as their highest, the illumined mind as their highest, the overmind from where they work. But it would be a shining ladder. And this is the ladder of even Nachiketa, which he talks about. The ladder of the beings who will be there, the shining gradation. And even within the supermind, this diversity would be there, this infinite diversity. Can you imagine? I mean, each one is an individual and unique, and yet manifesting the totality, and yet not same. There will be what Sri Aurobindo calls the hues of supernature. Each one would have a particular hue of supernature, a totality, but each totality would be a different totality from the other. And this is what once Amal told me when I was 18 and he was 88 when we first met. And it was, I think, for me, the second birth, I would say, because he was a realized being. He had realized the psychic, and his poetry, which we read yesterday, came from over mental worlds. And I had the chance to spend 12 years with him, and the vacations when I would visit him, and from morning to night. And very beautifully, he had this way of simplifying things. And he would say, when I asked him, Amal, how is it possible that there would be this diversity? And then he said, when both you and I become supramental beings, we would love everybody, but still the specialness of the love that we have today will continue to be there. But it's not based on ego, or it's not based on likes and dislikes. I like this one more or that more. It would be that freedom, that wholeness, and yet there would be that shade. As Sri Aurobindo says, it is the shade, not a shadow. That shade of difference would be there in all that we do. And that is the beauty of the psychic being and of the Purushottam, who make this a multitudinous variety full of diversity and beauty. The other four attributes which is spoken about, which Mother talks about, are lightness, adaptability, plasticity, and luminosity. So when the physical body is thoroughly divinized, there won't be any heaviness or tamas in the consciousness. And at this point, I would like to tell you about the beautiful vision that the Mother had about the supramental ship. She says that she saw of this vision, and when the Mother says vision, it is actually an experience of hers in another plane. That there is this ship, which is like a big house, and a lot of people are getting prepared and getting educated for the supramental world. And this ship is going to take them to the other side of the shore, which is the supramental world. And then she talks about how this supramental ship, everything there is made of the same matter, some supramental matter, she says. It is a combination of red and gold, like an orange, something like this that I'm wearing. And I chose to wear this because we were going to talk about the supramental today. And the Mother once had this little thing that she said, which is very profound. There were a lot of gifts that came from somebody from abroad. There were chocolates and lots of dolls and some turtles and a lot of paints. So she put them all out there and asked the kids to come and take whatever they like. And most of them took chocolates and paints and so on. And that is when the Mother said that when you're doing supramental yoga, your every choice, every action, it has to be one-pointed. And she says this turtle symbolizes immortality. And I would have been happy if one of you had chosen this turtle, because this would have shown that even this choice, when you have to look for something, there is nothing but this aspiration for immortality. And so that is why I just thought I would wear this orange today. So there's a big lesson there, I thought, that our choice has to be, our concentration has to be focused, and whatever sacrifice we make, everything that we spend energy is a sacrifice into the fire, the Agni of Nachiketa. So every energy that goes out has to be towards the growth of these fires. Okay, now coming back to this, Mother says the ship and everybody there, they're all made up of the same material. It is supramental matter. It is orange in color. And even there are no artificial clothes that the people are wearing. The same body, something changes and it becomes the cloth. And it is not difficult to understand because we took the example of the mango, right? Which is the surface being and the subliminal being. Potatoes, we know. The skin is nothing but when the actual thing, the fruit or the vegetable, when it interacts with the environment and oxidization happens or some chemical change happens, and that itself becomes the skin. It is not, the skin is nothing different or separate. So the supramental beings, the dress or the skin was also of the same material. And Mother was there, and she said she saw herself being there presiding over the whole thing. And she was asking those who were ready after the ship had reached the other shore, that those who would come would step down and those who would be there. And there she saw that on the other side of the shore, on the shore itself, were another kinds of beings. And they were less orangish, they were more whitish, and they were very tall. And it seems they came from some other world. And they were not residents of the supramental world, but they had come to receive these people who were coming to that. So there is a big clue in this vision, because even Sri Aurobindo says that this body, us, can only reach up to what he calls the Superman. The Superman. And the change from Superman to supramental is actually, there is a hiatus. It is that ascent is not possible by ourselves. And it is there that there is a descent happens. And when Mother says that Sri Aurobindo will be born as the first supramental being, that is what it means. And it is not now, throughout. There is a record of yoga of Sri Aurobindo, which was published in the Mother India, that the same thing happened when from monkeys we became man. It was not that the monkey became man, but there was a species called Vanaras. And they were created when the man from another plane kind of descended and helped, the apes to come up. So when a level is formed, that is how the stair works. For instance, now I'm in my mind, and I aspire to reach the higher mind. And the point at which the shift happens, if this ascent is actually the result of a descent, not just the descent of the higher mental plane, which as per the Dashavatar must have been established, at some point. But even this individual descent happens for this individual ascent to happen. So the yoga of Savitri, therefore, as James was saying, is a combination of ascent and descent, and we'll come to it in a moment. So the first attribute we said was this lightness. There won't be any heaviness. And the supramental, those people from the ship who were being sent back by these beings who were on the other shore had some patches of grayness, Mother says. So which means some earthly consciousness, some ignorance was still remaining, just patches, and they were being sent back to be purified. Because when knowledge, will, and action, as we discussed, are one, there has to be no room for that grayness. So there is no heaviness or tamas. That is the first, lightness. The second is adaptability. So it will immediately equal the demands placed upon it by the external environment. And what we discussed yesterday, that when Mother says, why am I so mediocre? I can do so many things, but I'm not the best. Sri Aurobindo says that was necessary for the work. Because it is not, when one has to go from the South Pole to North Pole, there is a way where you take one longitude and you reach there. It's very fast. But when we are doing integral yoga, it is a 360-degree yoga. It's from the South Pole, one is moving up to the North Pole in its totality, and therefore it is a slower process. That is why it is a ladder. What Shankara says, it is a sequential process. It is a slower process because we need to keep adapting, step by step. And when we are in 360 degree, when we have grown, all the longitudes, are grown and we reach the North Pole, that is when we are ready for the supramental body. And that is so, we'll come to that how do we then start practicing from today? Because this is the three fires, simultaneously it goes. We can't reach, so when one is starting from the South Pole, one has to take all the things together. One cannot go in one line up and then come down. And Mother talks about it when she says that the olden paradigm is gone, where like Keats or Shelley, if you are very sensitive in the emotions, then you're very weak in the body, or if like some of the people like who are very fine and refined in their minds, but in their external life, they're very gross. So Mother says that is a olden paradigm. The newer one is where, the older paradigm, the newer one is where we take all of this together. And adaptability means that no matter what the stimuli is from the environment, the response is there in the body. to meet it. And therefore, we need to constantly keep enlarging our skills, our knowledge, our attitudes, so that we are more and more adaptable. The third quality is plasticity. So plasticity means it would be, there would not be any hostility that it cannot take care of. Any hostile force, like if somebody shoots a bullet, it would go through it. Or it would be it would not, because there is no grayness of matter, there would be nothing in the body that would resist it. Everything would pass. And the fourth is luminosity. And we discussed about these things, that we don't have, it will be a body of light. It will be when normally people think of physical immortality, they think that this body will continue. It will be quite a pathetic thing, I think Mother says, this organs and all the way. We have 70% of organs that are used for the process of food, eating, digestion, excretion. The new body will not have 70% of the systems and the organs. The whole digestive tract will be gone. The whole the respiratory tract will still be there, because breathing would be there in the supramental being. So these are the four main attributes of lightness, adaptability, plasticity, and luminosity. And it is a step-by-step process. And this is the wonderful world of oneness of knowledge, will, and action, of knowledge by identity, absolute harmony, each one complete in itself and completing the manifestation. And this is depicted in the four boons of Savitri. So Savitri is the spiritual autobiography of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. All of these things have been experienced. Sri Aurobindo says he used to rewrite the lines of Savitri when he used to ascend the planes of consciousness. And if there is one tool, there are two tools we can have, which the Mother and Sri Aurobindo have given, that can help us in this journey. One is Savitri, the reading of it. It has a mantric quality. When we chant it aloud, the mantric quality directly works on the cells. And that was the Mother's yoga, the yoga of the cells. We will come to that once we go through the four boons, where first Savitri asks the return of Satyavan's father's eyesight and kingdom, Dyumatsena's kingdom and eyesight. That is the first boon she asks. And this is something from the Vedic vision in the light of Sri Aurobindo by Vladimir, with whom I study these things. And these are his insights, which I'm sharing with you. And as we said, these are symbolic things. We can't be very linear in our thinking. So this could be the divine mind, fallen, ignorant, it reclaiming back its knowledge. And the return of light, the first fall of the first being, which Mother says, when consciousness in light turned into complete darkness, the reclaiming of the consciousness in light is represented by Dyumatsena, his sight coming back. And the kingdom is again the habitation, in the body, where the psychic evolution is possible. So going back, like Nachiketa wanted to go back to his father, to the body. Dyumatsena going back to his kingdom, from where the possibility of psychicization can start. So this is the first boon that the Mother asks, that Savitri asks. The second is 100 sons for her own father, Ashwapati. So Ashwapati is this lord of tapasya, but he is sad, and because he does not have progeny, and he gets Savitri. So 100 is always representative of fullness. Even Isha, when it says Jiji Vishet Shatam Samaha, let us aspire to wish, and let us wish to live for 100 years. It is not the number 100, but it is that fullness. So the 100 sons for Ashwapati actually means the second, recovery, which is the return of consciousness, the bliss, the return of bliss from suffering, which is which Ashwapati is missing. Bliss was missing, so the return of the second supreme being, suffering into bliss, and these two constitute the ascent. Ashwapati's yoga is the yoga of ascent, and these two, the reaching of the mind, the consciousness in light, reaching back to ignorance, from ignorance, reaching back to light, and suffering, reaching back to bliss, is the yoga of ascent. And the next two boons, which is 100 sons for her and Satyavan, sometimes looks illogical to us, that Satyavan is actually dead. And how come before asking for his life, she's asking for 100 sons for her and Satyavan? So this is actually the divine soul in man is Satyavan. And 100 sons of Satyavan is actually, it means the supramental manifestation on earth. Before the individual immortality can be gained, the whole supramental plane has to be manifested, which Sri Aurobindo has done, brought the supramental into the earth consciousness. So the third boon, which is 100 sons of Satyavan, is this establishing of this the realm of the supermind. And this is the yoga of descent, because having reached the transcendental, the bliss and the chit, it is brought down as the yoga of descent. And the final boon is the life for Satyavan. This is the transformation of death into eternal life. And so this means there would not be any contradiction between soul evolved in the lower manifestation and the higher. It would become one. And the life of Satyavan is symbolic of the conversion of death to its counterpart, Sat, or the immortal life. And this is the last of the beings who had turned to death, they turn back to Sat. So this is the yoga of descent. So in Savitri, we find these three movements, the three yogas. One is the concentric yoga, inward, represented by the Divine Mother, reaching the psychic being through the subliminal selves and the rainbow bridge, the psychic being, that is the yoga of Savitri. The yoga of ascent, Ashwapati is the traveler of the worlds, the world stair through which he goes and reaches the transcendental. And the four boons, which are this yoga of descent, which the mother then brings this supramental force into the mind, life, and finally the body of Satyavan, and he becomes immortal. Now, the story of Satyavan is a little, and Savitri is a little more rich and complicated than that of Nachiketa, because in Nachiketa it is the last part of when Satyavan gets life and becomes immortal. But in Savitri, what Sri Aurobindo has done is the knowledge of the life divine is written in the form of Savitri. Savitri is life divine in poetry. the entire worldview and this entire immortality for the whole earth. It is yoga of the earth. It is not just yoga of one individual being. Though Satyavan represents that, he represents Nachiketa. But compared to the Kathopanishad in Savitri, what mother is trying to establish is not just immortality for Satyavan, but the entire, the entire process, the creating of those bridges. And that is the work since 1958, after until even, and she says that Sri Aurobindo was working on it. He had all the maps. Now he's left after 1950, and my journey is like that through a virgin forest where I don't know, it has never happened in the past. For the first time in the human history, evolution of human history, was this being done. And all the necessary bridges, the planes have been established by the mother. It is very detailed in agenda. We can maybe take up Aging is a Myth, Dying a Bad Habit Part 2, where we go into this in detail. Because the triple chord of Shunakshepa, which is kind of understood as mind, life, and body, the mother talks about it as the physical mind, the vital mind, and the mental mind. And there are pages and pages in agenda where she talks about this physical mind. And it is with this that we will end today, because it is very beautiful to know this entire scheme of things. We know that it is possible, but yet the next question is, where do we start? We discuss that in detail. We find that inner flame, which is from this transcendental world, bring it out, light the three fires. And the crux of it, what Mother says, is this physical mind. The physical mind. The physical mind is that which helps us live in this world. It kind of, when I see this book, I know this is a book. It kind of connects me to life. And it also has the mechanisms of protecting us. So fear, the root of fear is in the physical mind. And it was a necessity of evolution because the individuality had to be retained. So the entire this complex of fear has its root in the physical mind, and that is what keeps us safe, that is what keeps us alive, that is what keeps us connected to matter. And yet that is the noose, the cord that has to be loosened, and it is very tight. And the mother says that the body, actually the cells, when she was working on the cells, it is lying under three meshes, the three meshes of this intellectual mind, which is like a loosely formed mesh, and then the sense mind, which gets more and more dense. But below that, she says, is this physical mind, which is absolutely holding the body and not allowing the body to think. Each cell actually has its own mind. It has an intelligence, and it has the supramental intelligence. It is ingrained in matter. But this physical mind, that it's like a mother who would not let the child go out and study because she loves it too much, would not allow him to go to university and stay with her. So the physical mind holds this physical like that out of love. That is a form of love, but that is also what we call attachment. And that is also what we call this fear of losing it. And that is also what we call the desire for life. So this triple knot of ego, desire, and attachment is actually here at the physical level, the physical mind, and it just won't let go, because that is death if it let goes. So just as long as we are eating, we are going to die. Similarly, as long as we have to live in this world, we need the physical mind, and that itself would make us die. So at the physical level, at the physical mind, and at the conscious level, there is another tool which the mother has left for us, which I would share with you and end the session today. So for the being and the higher mind and the inner mind and all of that, the reading of Savitri is what is really helpful, because it has that mantric quality. And from the level of this physical mind down into this dense matter, into this inconscient, into this subconscient, where no thinking, no feeling can reach. We cannot tell it what to do. It has a mind of its own and it won't listen to us. Mother has given, this beautiful japa, which I would like to share with you. This is the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate, and chanted in the voice of the mother. And she says, this is the mantra that if we chant, it works at the physical level, at the level of the physical mind and the body, and slowly makes the body ready and open.
Om Namo Bhagavate. 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 Om Namo Bhagavate.
So with this, Om Namo Bhagavate, we end the session.